Now, you talk about something that I think is really interesting, and I'd like you to expand on it some. You talk about how a fully involved dad develops a dad brain. Talk about what you mean by dad brain, because you're talking about really activating a nest of neurons that would otherwise be dormant.
That's right. Before started doing the research for the boy crisis, I just assumed, we have a motherhood instinct that gets activated, particularly when a woman is pregnant. I had no idea that there was a whole nest of dormant neurons that, depending on how a father reacts when a baby is born, will either get activated or not. So if a father interprets his role when a baby is born as, now I have to increase my focus on my work in order to be able to provide more money for the family, the dad brain doesn't develop so effectively or so much. But if he starts focusing to a considerable degree on the love that he feels for the child and for the infant, even before the child is born, touching the mother's belly, investing himself emotionally in that potential for that child's birth, and sees himself as actively involved, this whole nest of neurons begins to connect. And so the dad develops a brain that's very similar to, but not identical to, the brain that develops that we call the motherhood instinct. His part of his instincts are different, but his involvement. We often say mothers have unconditional love. Well, dads also have unconditional love. Dads don't so much have unconditional approval, but the way they love is by more conditional approval that is unconditional in its love. And so when he invests that way, his dad brain develops to be very similar to, but again different also than the mom brain's development when a child is born.
Well, when I was reading about that in your book, I really recognized what you were talking about. And the book we're talking about is The Boy Crisis, by the way. I highly recommend, if you're a parent or one of your children is becoming a parent or someone in your family is, you pick this up. You can find it wherever books are sold, on Amazon, wherever. It's called The Boy Crisis. It's a great read. It's an easy read, but it is very thought provoking. And when I had my first child, Jay, I was very involved. I recognized a change in my value system and in my brain. And I was a pilot. I used to fly a certain way, never recklessly, but aggressively. I never thought twice about shooting a IFR approach down to minimums in weather or whatever. And as soon as Jay was born, I immediately started flying differently. I asked myself, why am I doing this? Why am I shooting an approach down to 200 feet and 1,800-foot runway visual range? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You don't have the right to do this. All of a sudden, I started questioning things that I would never even have thought about before. And it was a feeling as well as a thought process. I started shortening trips and changing everything to be involved, and then started coaching little league teams, and everything changed, and you get involvement. And like I say, it's different than mom. She's the soft place to fall, and you have this unconditional love, even though you might require different things of him than a mom might. So I understand the difference between conditional but unconditional love. So you described it very, very well from what I experienced. And the outcomes that you talk about, I want to discuss. And listen, it doesn't mean that single moms cannot raise very productive, successful, well adjusted young men, because they certainly can and do every day. And they're my heroes, these single moms that are working and raising children and doing what it takes are my absolute heroes. But there are outcomes of children that are father deprived. It even affects something called the telomere in children. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, one of the things that shocked me when I was doing the research for the boy crisis was the telomere difference. That at the age of 9.5, there was scientific studies of telomeres. Those are the cells in our body that contain all our preventive diseases, like they prevent cancer, prevent heart disease, and other things. And so when boys and girls have access to their fathers in a significant way by the age of 9.5, they are likely to have longer telomeres. That's the single biggest predictor of a longer life expectancy, predicted at the age of 9.5. So when they're dad deprived, the telomeres on average of girls and boys are 40% shorter. That is, the prediction of their potential life expectancy is already at a 40% shorter rate. However, the boys, I said 40% shorter, I meant to say 14% shorter, but the difference with boys is yet 40% shorter than the difference with girls. And so the dad deprivation has this huge impact on the life expectancy of children at even that early age, but an even disproportionate more impact on the life expectancy of boys, either being considerably shorter or considerably longer, even than girls. And it's sort of it's both science and also a metaphor for the impact of the dad deprivation on both sexes. And having said that, I also want to really reinforce what you just said a minute ago about, you know, nobody works harder probably in this world than our single moms. And no one is more devoted to the love of the children. And there are many things that single moms can do. Number one, to give their children balance. Number one is to understand the differences between dad style parenting and mom style parenting, and value that enough to bring the father back into the family. But if the father is absolutely hopeless and can't be brought into the family or has passed away, there's also things that moms can do, like get their children involved in faith-based communities, get them involved in sports. And I don't mean just sports, like team sports. I mean what I call the liberal arts of sports, which is team sports, which is pickup team sports, which are very important for developing entrepreneurs, and also sports that require self-starting, and to perform on your own. And when children have that combination, they can really develop very effectively. Find a mentor for your children if you're a single mom, but also encourage the mentor to help your son find somebody to mentor. Because just like Dr. Phil just said, his way of thinking about the world changed the moment he had Jay in his life and his other son in his life. A boy changes. He starts saying, I have to finish my homework, or I'll look like I won't be a good example for that boy I'm mentoring. I have to perform well in the sport like I said I was going to, or I'll look like a loser and the boy I'm mentoring will not pay much attention to me. It's the sense of feeling like I am needed that men and women both need, but women often get that the moment they have a child. A father has to be told his differences in the way he parents. Those differences are valued. I need you to roughhouse. I need you to press me on taking risks that are sensible risks with our son. I need you, husband, or I need you, a biological dad, even if we're divorced.
Yeah, and I wanted to point that out because if moms are listening and they say, well, great, I've got a son and the dad's a drug addict or he's in prison or he's just uninvolved, he started another family and he just is not engaged in any way. So what? I'm screwed here. So my son's going to have his telomere 14% decreased and 40% more than 14% because he's a boy. So you're just telling me that I'm doomed because his dad's not here. And what you're saying is not true. You can fill that need in other ways, and you can do it by expanding your parenting style to continue to be the mother and the soft place to fall and all the things that mothers are so good at innately, but expand your parenting style to also include some things that are further out on the continuum than what you might normally do. And then make sure that he does have exposure to some well selected males that can provide that influence on him and then putting him in that role so he can take up the responsibility and become the role model as well. Both of those things. So, moms that don't have a dad in the home or available, they're not left out. They can still provide that stimulus, that input, that role modeling for their child. So it's not that they're just out in the cold.
Absolutely. And do pay attention to the part of the Boy Crisis book where I talk about dad style parenting, and then just get yourself involved in something like, what is dad style parenting? It might be something like roughhousing. So don't be afraid to roughhouse with your children. And because the normal reaction is when dad's roughhouse, it's like, oh my God, I just feel like I have one more child to monitor here. And yet I don't want to be controlling, and the children seem to be having fun. So I'll try to stay away, but I just intuitively feel that, somebody's going to get hurt here sooner or later. And now mom is only about 99.9% likely to be right. And sooner or later, one of the children
Right.
gets hurt a little bit. And then the mom is shocked that the dad says, okay, sweetie, you can't put your elbow in your sister's eyes like that. And if you do that again, we're going to stop roughhousing. And mom goes, wait a minute. You didn't learn the lesson from the fact that the kids just got hurt. You're going to give them another chance and roughhouse again. But it's that other chance that dad invests in. And then when the children violate because they're experiencing emotional intelligence under fire, as the psychologist put it, and they don't pay attention to dad's conditions on which roughhousing will continue, and then dad stops the roughhousing when those conditions don't continue. He doesn't repeat, I told you couldn't do this, and give them another chance. He stops the roughhousing, and it's that teaches the children postponed gratification. I can't have the gratification of winning unless I consider my sister's needs, my brother's needs, and I understand the difference between being aggressive versus being assertive. And the kids who understand, who have empathy and are able to be assertive, not aggressive, they have more friends in school. They do well. The kids that have postponed gratification do well in their subjects and in every other way. And that's what leads to the children. One of the things that leads to children being healthier. But mom, you can do that roughhousing also. And as long as you couple it with boundary enforcement and not a repeat of the suggestion to be assertive versus aggressive.
Yeah, and you've got to study that some because, dad might say, hey, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. Sometimes dad can go too far that way and it's not always right, but, mom can make some adjustments there.